The night before Exterminatus does not announce itself with alarms or sermons. It arrives quietly, like a held breath, like the moment between a trigger pull and the round leaving the chamber. I stand at the observation port of the Sanctum of Absolution, my gauntlets resting against cold adamantium glass, and I look down upon a world that does not yet know it has already died. From orbit, the planet is beautiful. That is the first cruelty. Clouds drift like unbroken parchment across oceans that still reflect the light of a distant sun. Cities glow softly along the night side, each pinprick of light a life, a family, a voice raised in prayer to an emperor who will not answer them tonight. I know their prayers. I have spoken the same words in another life, with another name, in a body that was allowed to hope. The ship is silent around me, not the silence of peace, but of restraint. Every system is primed. Every weapon waits. The cyclonic torpedoes sleep within their sanctified cradles, their machine spirits soothed by litanies older than most stars. They are patient things. They have all the time in the galaxy. It is the living who suffer from waiting. I am Brother Justicar of the Grey Knights, sworn blade of the Ordo Malleus, and tonight I am assigned to witness. That is my duty, not to command the extermination, not to argue its necessity, but to stand as proof that this act is not taken lightly, that there are those who see, who remember, who carry the weight forward after the world is ash. The irony is not lost on me. I am trusted to remember, when memory is the very thing my order seeks to excise. Below us the planet turns, unaware that its rotation has already been measured and judged. The taint was confirmed 3 days ago. A whisper at first, a deviation in astropathic choirs, dreams that ended in screaming. By the time we arrived, the cult had already bloomed, as such things always do, feeding on desperation, on promises of salvation, in a universe that offers none. They always believe they are the exception, that their gods will spare them, that they will be rewarded for opening the door. I close my eyes, and for a moment, against all training, I imagine the surface. I imagine a man standing on a balcony, feeling the night breeze, unaware that it carries the last untainted air he will ever breathe. I imagine a mother soothing a child, frightened by distant riots, telling them that everything will be all right, because that is what parents do, even when they know it is a lie. I imagine a priest lighting candles in a chapel, convinced that faith is enough to stop what is coming. These thoughts are dangerous. They are unnecessary. They are human. I let them pass, as I was taught, but they leave a residue. They always do. The chamber behind me hums softly as the ship adjusts orbit. I can feel it through my armor, through the bones that were reshaped and reinforced until they no longer remembered what fragility felt like. I remember fragility. That is my curse. When I was taken to Titan, they told me the past would be burned away, cauterized in ritual and agony. For most of my brothers it was. Names, faces, places, all reduced to ash, to make room for duty. Something in me resisted, or perhaps it was allowed to remain, as an experiment, as a warning. I was never told which. The world below has a name. It is written in the mission logs, stamped with sigils of sanction and finality. I do not speak it. Names give shape to things. They make them harder to destroy. Footsteps approach behind me, heavy and deliberate. I do not turn. I know who it is by the weight alone. You should not watch for so long, the Grand Master says, his voice a low thunder filtered through centuries of discipline. Attachment breeds weakness. I am not attached, I reply. The lie tastes old. I am remembering why this must be done. There is a pause. I can feel his gaze on me, assessing, as he always does, measuring deviation against usefulness. Then remember correctly, he says. Remember the screams we heard in the underhives. Remember the warp breach in the southern continent. Remember the daemons that wore human faces and begged for mercy with voices that still sounded real. I nod. I do remember those things too. I remember the blood that steamed when it touched consecrated steel. I remember the way the sky tore open like rotten flesh. I remember killing a man who looked at me with recognition, as if he knew me, as if one might once have shared a life. That memory, I wish they had taken. The Grand Master leaves me to my vigil. He trusts me, as much as one of my kind can trust another who remembers. The hours crawl. Time stretches differently when extinction is scheduled. Servitors chant chronomantic litanies. Tech priests anoint firing mechanisms. Somewhere deep within the ship, an astropath weeps quietly as she listens to the final prayers of a dying world, her mind burning itself out in the process. Tomorrow, she will be executed, her knowledge deemed too dangerous to preserve. This is how the Imperium survives, by deciding who is allowed to carry the truth and for how long. As the planet's night deepens, something stirs at the edge of my perception, a pressure behind the eyes, a familiar itch in the soul. The warp does not like to be denied its harvest. It knows what is coming. I feel it testing the barriers, whispering through the cracks of reality, promising escape, promising vengeance, promising that this destruction will not go unanswered. I answer with silence and a prayer carved into my bones. I think of the first time I learned what exterminatus truly meant, not the definition recited in catechisms, but the reality. I was still new to my armor then, my movements precise but not yet instinctive. We watched a world burn from orbit, just as I am doing now. I remember expecting to feel something grand, something righteous. Instead, I felt only a hollowing absence, like a room emptied of furniture, but still echoing with past voices. That echo never left me. The planet below begins its final rotation. Dawn creaks across continents that will never see another sunrise. In a few hours, the order will be given. In a few minutes, the targeting rites will begin. Until then, I stand and bear witness, because someone must. Because if no one remembers what was lost, then all of this truly becomes meaningless. I press my palm against the glass, feeling the vibration of 1 billion lives through layers of void-hardened steel. I whisper an apology I was never taught to give, not to the Emperor, not to my brothers, but to the man I used to be, who believed that saving humanity meant saving humans. The lights in the chamber dim. The signal is coming. This is the night before Exterminatus, and I am still awake. The signal comes as a change in the air, subtle but absolute. The sanctum of absolution shifts from watchfulness to intent. Every lumen strip dulls to a muted red, the color of warning and blood, and the ship's machine spirit exhales through 1,000 conduits as it accepts what it is about to do. I feel the vibration travel up through the deck plates, through my boots, into my bones. This vessel was built for war, but tonight it will commit an act that even war struggles to justify. I leave the observation port and walk the processional corridor toward the strategium. My steps echo, counted and measured, as if the ship itself is keeping score. Along the walls, reliefs depict the Emperor in judgment, worlds aflame beneath his gaze, entire civilizations reduced to symbolic embers. I have passed these carvings countless times, yet tonight they feel less like warnings and more like confessions. The Imperium does not deny what it is. It simply insists that there is no alternative. As I move, memories surface unbidden. The night before my own erasure was quieter than this. I remember being told to rest, to pray, to prepare my mind for rebirth. I remember lying awake on a stone slab, staring at a ceiling carved with sigils meant to soothe the soul, and wondering whether the Emperor would recognize me after I was remade. That question was never answered. It no longer matters, or so I tell myself. The strategium doors part with a hiss of pressurized seals. Inside, the air is thick with incense and data streams. Hollow displays show the doomed planet in perfect detail. Continents outlined in cold light, population centers marked not with names but with numbers. Generals and inquisitors stand in silent communion with their consuls, their faces rigid, their minds already distancing themselves from what is to come. No one speaks unless necessary. Words are dangerous things on a night like this. I take my place at the periphery as ordered, a witness, not a voice. From here I can see the cyclonic torpedo crews through secondary feeds. They move with ritual precision, hams steady, expressions hidden behind rebreathers and devotion. Each torpedo is a cathedral of destruction, engraved with prayers that promise annihilation in the Emperor's name. They will crack the planet's crust, ignite its core, and scatter its remains into a debris field that will take millennia to cool. Nothing survives Exterminatus. Not bodies, not records, not ghosts. In theory. The Inquisitor presiding over this judgment steps forward. His rosette gleams like a final verdict. He recites the charges against the world below: heresy, demonology, contamination beyond redemption. Each word is delivered with the cadence of inevitability. I have heard this litany before. It never changes. Only the planet does. As he speaks, I feel the warp push harder, like a tide battering against a dam it knows will soon be destroyed. The demons on the surface are aware now. They sense the denial of their feast, the closing of the door they worked so hard to open. Their rage bleeds upward through reality, a psychic scream that claws at the edges of thought. Some of the officers flinch, others pretend not to feel it. I welcome it. Pain at least is honest. I close my eyes and brace my mind, reciting the canticle of abjuration, each word a nail hammered into the coffin of doubt. Fragments slip through. I see flashes of the surface as it is now. Cultists gathered in triumph, unaware of the sentence already passed. Soldiers making a last stand in streets choked with ash. Civilians huddled in shelters that were never designed to protect them from the sky itself turning against them. These visions are not prophecy, they are probability. They are the inevitable shape of despair. A junior officer approaches me, his voice low. "Brother Justicar," he says, struggling to meet my gaze. Do you ever question it?" The question is treasonous. It is also human. I look at him, really look, and see the cracks forming beneath his discipline. This night will follow him for the rest of his life, however long that lasts. I could lie to him. Many would. "Yes," I say, every time. His eyes widen, then harden, as he forces himself to nod. He steps back, ashamed, relieved, burdened. I have given him no comfort, only truth. It is all I have left to give. The final authorization codes are entered. Multiple confirmations, redundancies layered upon redundancies, as if repetition can dilute guilt. The countdown begins, displayed in stark numerals that tick away the remaining seconds of an entire world's existence. With each decrement, the pressure in my skull increases. The warp screams louder. Somewhere far below, a prophet feels his god recoil. I think of Titan, of its frozen halls and endless drills, of brothers kneeling in rows as their pasts were carved out of them piece by piece. I think of how proud I was to be chosen, how certain I was that this path led to meaning. I understand now that meaning is something you assign after the fact, a narrative imposed on necessity to make it bearable. The countdown reaches its final moments. The Inquisitor raises his hand, not in prayer, but in command. I whisper one last apology, not aloud, but into the silence of my own mind. It is swallowed instantly, lost among a billion others that were never spoken. The order is given. For a heartbeat, nothing happens. Then the cyclonic torpedoes launch, tearing free from the ship with a violence that rattles the very void. They streak toward the planet like falling stars, like judgment made manifest. The hollow display flares as they breach atmosphere, their trajectories flawless, their purpose singular. Impact. The surface of the world blossoms outward, a chain reaction of unimaginable force. Plates of crust buckle and shatter. Oceans flash to steam. Cities vanish in incandescent light. The planet screams as its core is exposed, a soundless agony that nonetheless reverberates through the warp. I feel it in my chest, a phantom pain where a heart once ached for things it can no longer name. The destruction accelerates, unstoppable, merciless. Within minutes, the world is no longer a world, but a wound in space, a roiling mass of fire and debris. The warp recoils, its presence snapping back like a severed limb. The pressure lifts. The silence that follows is worse. No one speaks. There is nothing left to say. I remain standing long after the displays have dimmed, long after the strategium begins to empty. The ship adjusts course, already moving on to its next obligation. That is how this ends. Not with mourning, but with scheduling. As I turn to leave, I catch my reflection in a polished panel, a towering figure in silver armor, etched with wards and scars, a weapon given shape and purpose. For a moment, just a moment, I see another face beneath it. Younger, uncertain, looking back with accusation rather than obedience. I hold that gaze until it fades. Tomorrow, the system will be marked cleansed, records will be sealed. If any exist beyond the edges of probability, will be hunted down and silenced. The Imperium will endure another day. Humanity will be saved, in the way it is always saved. I walk back toward my chamber carrying the weight of a dead world in a mind that was never meant to remember it. This was one night before Exterminatus. There will be others. Sleep does not come after Exterminatus. It never does. The body may kneel in meditation, may recite the prescribed litanies, may lower its vital rhythms to the threshold of rest, but the mind remains awake, pacing the ruins it has just created. I returned to my chamber on instinct alone, guided by corridors I could walk blind, their geometry carved into me as deeply as any catechism. The doors seal behind me with a finality that echoes too closely to the sound of a world ending. The chamber is bare. Stone, metal, silence. A shrine set into the far wall bears the sigil of the Emperor, not as a god of mercy, but as a law made flesh. I remove my helm and set it aside. The air bites at my scarred skin, cold enough to punish any lingering weakness. I welcome it. Pain anchors me. Pain reminds me that I am still here, when an entire planet is not. I kneel. The words of the litany of stillness leave my mouth automatically, each syllable shaped by centuries of tradition. I have spoken them thousands of times. Tonight they feel thinner, stretched. Between each phrase, images intrude. Fire crawling across continents, atmosphere boiling away. A final, collective silence, as every voice is cut off at once. The Imperium calls this cleansing. The warp calls it theft. I tighten my focus, building the mental walls drilled into me on Titan. Memory is a breach point. That is what they taught us. Memory leads to empathy. Empathy leads to hesitation. Hesitation gets worlds killed. The logic is flawless. It is also incomplete. What they never explained is what happens when memory survives the purge, when it grows stronger under pressure, when it sharpens instead of eroding. I rise and cross to the narrow viewport cut into the chamber's outer hull. The debris field where the planet once existed still glows faintly, a cloud of cooling ruin drifting in slow, majestic arcs. It will take centuries for this system to look empty again. Long after the Imperium forgets the name of the world it destroyed, the stars here will remember. A presence brushes the edge of my thoughts. Faint, cautious. It is not demonic. I would know that instantly. This is something else. Residual psychic static, perhaps. Or something that slipped through the narrowing window between existence and annihilation. Exterminatus is thorough, but the warp is not governed by thoroughness. It feeds on what lingers. I close my eyes and reach outward, just enough to taste the echo. Regret, fear, confusion. Not a single mind, but a smear of impressions like fingerprints burned into reality. For a moment, I am overwhelmed by the sheer scale of it, the psychic afterimage of billions of deaths, compressed into a sensation too vast to categorize. My training strains. The wards etched into my flesh flare, hot and insistent. I pull back, breathing slowly, forcing the echo down into something manageable. This is why the Grey Knights exist, not to destroy worlds, but to survive what remains afterward. To stand in the psychic fallout and not break. To be proof that the Imperium can look into the abyss and still function. Still, the echo clings. I sense questions in it. Not accusations. Questions. Why? How? Was there truly no other way? These are not questions the Imperium answers. These are questions it buries under doctrine and ash. I remember another night, long ago, before my ascension, when I asked similar questions of a man who claimed to be a preacher. He spoke of salvation, of hidden truths, of powers that could uplift humanity beyond its suffering. I remember feeling hope then, sharp and dangerous. I remember how easily it was shaped. That memory should not exist. It was meant to be erased. Perhaps that is why I was chosen, or perhaps that is why I am still useful. A chime sounds softly, indicating an incoming summons. The Grand Master does not waste time with condolences or ritualized silence. There is always another front, another threat clawing at the walls of reality. I replace my helm, sealing myself back into anonymity, and make my way to the command deck. As I walk, I feel the ship accelerate, leaving the dead system behind. The echo follows, thinner now, stretched like a fading shadow. It will dissipate eventually. They always do. The mind cannot hold that much loss forever. Something has to give. Most often, it is memory. On the command deck, the mood is already shifting. Orders are being issued, new coordinates plotted. The language of annihilation replaced with the language of logistics. This transition is perhaps the most unsettling part. The ease with which extinction becomes routine. I stand among them, listening, contributing when required, my voice steady, my thoughts anything but. We are bound for another world, another crisis. There will be daemons to banish, cults to erase, truths to seal away. The cycle continues. The Emperor's mercy is not gentle. It is precise, and it is endless. As the ship enters the warp, reality stretches and screams around us, colors bleeding into impossible geometries. The echo finally thins to nothing, lost in the greater madness of the Imperium. I feel a momentary release, like a wound scabbing over. It will scar. They always do. I take my place in the meditation hold, locking my armor into the restraints designed for warp transit. Around me, my brothers do the same, silent statues of silver and resolve. They do not look at me. They rarely do. Perhaps they sense the difference. Perhaps they simply do not care. As the warp engulfs us, I allow myself one final forbidden thought. Not of the planet that died, but of the countless nights like this one that stretch ahead, each demanding the same sacrifice, the same rationalization, the same quiet burial of doubt. I wonder briefly how many worlds it takes before even memory learns to surrender. Then the warp closes in, and there is only duty. Time loses its shape within the warp. Minutes stretch into something indistinguishable from hours. Hours collapse into a single sustained pressure against the mind. The restraints hold my armor rigid, but they cannot still thought. The Imperium presses close, curious, hateful, endlessly creative in its cruelty. Colors that do not exist bleed across the viewing wards, and shapes coil through one another with the intimacy of parasites. This is the sea we sail so that others do not have to know it exists. I focus inward, counting breaths I do not need to take, reciting the internal mantras etched into my neural architecture. Around me, my brothers are statues of discipline, their minds sealed behind layers of indoctrination so dense that even the warp struggles to find purchase. I envy them, in a distant academic way. Their faith is clean, their certainty unbroken. When they look upon Exterminatus, they see necessity and nothing else. When I look upon it, I see the cost. The warp shifts. A tremor runs through the Geller field, brief but unmistakable. Warning runes flare, then stabilize. Somewhere in the ship, a servitor screams as its borrowed soul brushes against something vast and hungry. A sound cuts off abruptly. Order is restored. It always is. We do not pause for such things. The pressure returns, heavier now, deliberate. I recognize the sensation before the alarm sound. Something is aware of us, not a mindless predator, not a random eddy of unreality, but an intelligence that knows who we are and what we have done. The wards along my armor heat, tracing their sigils with burning insistence. I taste copper and ash. A voice brushes my thoughts, careful, almost respectful. You took my harvest. I do not respond. Silence is the first weapon we are taught. That world was promised, the voice continues, amusement threaded through its contempt. It was ripe. It was faithful. Faith is not ownership, I think. My mental defenses locking into place. Laughter ripples through the warp, distorting the colors beyond the viewing wards. Everything is ownership, little knight. Even you. The pressure spikes, probing, searching for fractures. It finds them easily. Memory is a weakness, and mine is unusually rich. Images flash, uninvited. The planet before it burned. The moment of impact. The echo of billions dying. The voice savors each fragment, lingering on my reaction. You remember them, it says softly. You carry them with you. How generous, how wasteful. I grit my teeth and push back, flooding my mind with sanctioned hatred, with the Emperor's name, spoken not as a prayer but as a weapon. The wards flare brighter. Pain lances through me, white-hot and clarifying. The presence recoils slightly, surprised. Interesting, it murmurs. They let you keep this. Why? Because someone has to know what is being done, I think, though the thought wavers even as it forms. The presence withdraws, its interest fading, already seeking easier prey. As it goes, it leaves behind a final whisper, a seed planted with deliberate care. One night you will remember too much. The pressure eases. The warp settles into its usual howling chaos. Around me, my brothers remain unmoved. If they sensed anything, it did not breach their discipline. I say nothing. To report such an encounter would invite scrutiny I do not need. I survived. That is enough. Eventually, impossibly, the warp releases us. Reality snaps back into place with bone-jarring force. Stars reassert themselves. Time resumes its forward crawl. The Geller field stabilizes fully, and the ship's systems hum with renewed confidence. We have arrived. The world ahead is smaller than the last, an industrial moon choked with manufactoria and prayer factories, its surface scarred by centuries of extraction and devotion. From orbit, it already looks half dead. The taint here is localized, recent, aggressive, a summoning gone wrong, or right, depending on perspective. There will be no exterminatus tonight. There will be something more intimate. I rise from the restraints, my muscles adjusting instantly. Purpose asserts itself, sharp and familiar. We prepare for deployment, weapons blessed, armor sealed, minds hardened. This is what we were made for. This is where doubt is supposed to burn away in the face of direct action. As the Thunderhawk bays cycle open, I feel the memory of the destroyed world settle deeper, compacted by fresh obligation. It does not fade, it adapts, it becomes context. We descend through polluted skies into a city already in the process of dying. Sirens wail below, fires burn unchecked. I feel the warp bleeding through the cracks of reality, thin but eager. This, at least, is a battle I can touch, an enemy I can see. As my boots hit the ground, I offer no prayers for the dead. There will be time for that later, if there is ever time again. Tonight there is only the work. Yet even as I advance, blade humming, stormbolter ready, a fragment of thought persists, quiet and corrosive. The night before Exterminatus is over, but its shadow stretches far beyond a single world. I wonder how many such nights are etched into the bones of the Imperium, unseen, uncounted, endured by those who are not allowed to forget. Then the enemy reveals itself, and all thought collapses into motion. The first demon dies without ceremony. It lunges from a rupture in the air itself, a thing of talons and borrowed flesh, its form half remembered from some human nightmare. My blade takes it apart in a single practiced arc, silver fire flaring as wards ignite. The creature's scream is brief, more offended than pained, before it dissolves back into the warp with a sound like tearing cloth. I do not watch it die. I am already moving. The streets of the Manufactorum city are narrow and vertical, towers of rusted steel and devotion, rising into a sky the color of old bruises. Conveyor lines hang like skeletal intestines between buildings, still carrying parts no one will ever assemble. Somewhere above us, hab-block windows glow with frantic movement. Civilians, unarmed, unprepared, they look down and see us, and for a moment hope flares in their eyes. Hope is dangerous. Advance, I voiced, my voice steady, merciless. My brothers move with me, a wall of silver pushing forward through smoke and falling ash. Auto gunfire rattles against our armor, pitiful, instinctive. Cultists scream praises to gods that will not save them. We answer with disciplined violence. Bolt rounds detonate bodies into fragments of meat and conviction. The air fills with blood and incense and ozone. This is the part the Imperium understands. This is the image it prefers. Knights descending from the sky, evil struck down, order restored through righteous force. It is clean, it is cinematic. It hides everything that came before, and everything that will come after. The real battle is not in the streets. It is deeper. I feel the summoning sight before I see it, a gravity in the soul pulling us toward the center of corruption. Beneath the city, in maintenance vaults never meant to house faith, the cult has opened a wound. Reality is thin there, stretched and bleeding, like skin pulled too tight over bone. Every step closer makes my wards burn hotter, my thoughts sharper, more brittle. We breach the access point with explosive force. The doors vaporize inward, revealing a chamber carved from stolen prayers and desperation. Hundreds of bodies kneel in concentric circles, chanting in perfect manic unison. Their mouths move, but the words do not belong to them anymore. Sigils are carved into flesh with loving precision. Blood runs in channels that glow with warp light, feeding the ritual like fuel lines. At the center, something is coming through. It is not fully formed yet, and that makes it worse. Limbs phase in and out of coherence. Faces surface briefly in its mass, screaming as they are subsumed. The air vibrates with anticipation. This thing was meant to be born into a living world. Exterminatus would have starved it. Instead, it adapts. So, the thing says, though its mouth is still unfinished. The witness returns. My grip tightens on my blade. I recognize the psychic signature instantly. The presence from the warp. It has found me again. You should not be here, I say, advancing. This world is denied to you. The daemon laughs, the sound echoing through dimensions that should not overlap. Denied? No, delayed. You burn one garden night and think the forest mourns? You carry their deaths inside you. I tasted them through you, such richness. My brothers open fire, storm bolters roaring, psy-cannon rounds screaming as they tear into the ritual circle. Cultists explode in sprays of blood and shattered faith. The chanting falters, then collapses into panic. The daemon howls as its birth is disrupted, its form destabilizing. I push forward through the chaos, ignoring the claws raking my armor, ignoring the psychic pressure trying to peel my thoughts apart. Pain blooms. I welcome it. Pain is simple. You remember them, the daemon hisses, its voice suddenly close, intimate. Every scream, every moment. You pretend it is duty, but it is hunger. You need them to die, or your sacrifice means nothing. The words strike deeper than claws ever could. For a fraction of a second, doubt flickers. Is that true? Do I justify annihilation by carrying it with me? Turning loss into proof of necessity? That moment almost kills me. A surge of warp energy slams into my wards, cracking one of the sigils along my chest plate. Agony rips through me as feedback scorches nerve and soul alike. I drop to one knee, vision blurring, the daemon surging forward, sensing weakness. My brothers form a defensive ring around me instantly, blades flashing, psychic hoods flaring. They do not ask, they do not judge. This is brotherhood stripped of sentiment, and in that moment it saves me. I force myself up, drawing on reserves I did not know remained. The Emperor's name fills my mind, not as comfort, but as command. I step into the heart of the ritual and drive my blade into the core of the daemon's forming mass. Silver fire erupts, consuming sigils, bodies, lies. The daemon shrieks, its voice fracturing into 1,000 overlapping tones. I feel it unraveling, its grip on reality slipping. As it dies, it whispers one last thing, not with malice but with certainty. You cannot erase a night like that. Then it is gone. The chamber collapses into silence broken only by crackling flames and the wet sounds of dying cultists. The warp wound seals itself with a sound like a sutured scream. The pressure lifts. My wards cool, though one remains dark, permanently scarred. I stand amid the ruin, breathing hard, my armor dented, my mind raw. My brothers look to me for the next command. To them this was a successful purge, a threat eliminated, a line held. To me, it is confirmation. The night before Exterminatus does not end when the planet dies. It follows, it watches, it waits for the cracks to widen. As we withdraw from the chamber and the city begins its slow return to order, I feel the memories settle again, heavier now, reinforced by the daemon's certainty. I do not know how many more such nights I can carry before something gives, but I know this: if the Imperium survives by forgetting, then someone must endure the remembering, and for now, that someone is me. The extraction comes at dawn, though dawn here is only a thinning of smoke and the dull glow of industrial fires reflected off a poisoned sky. Thunderhawks descend through the haze like executioners returning their blades to the sheath. The city below is quieter now, not peaceful, quieter. Sirens have burned out, riots have collapsed into exhausted whimpers. The cult is broken, its core annihilated, its remaining adherents scattered and already marked for later erasure by other arms of the Imperium. Order, of a kind, has been restored. I watch it all from the ramp as we lift off, my boots planted, my blade magnet locked at my side. Civilians look up as we rise, their faces streaked with soot and blood, their eyes searching us for meaning. Some kneel, some weep, some simply stare, hollow and uncomprehending. They will tell stories about this night. Most of those stories will be wrong. The Imperium will allow that. Myths are safer than truth. As the ground falls away, I feel a familiar pull in my chest. Not regret, something heavier. Responsibility does not end with survival. It compounds. Back aboard the sanctum of absolution, the rites of decontamination begin immediately. Psychic residue is burned away with sanctioned flame, and pain measured to the threshold of functionality. Servitors scrape Damon Ichor from ceramite. Tech Marines examine the cracked ward on my chest plate, their voices flat as they record the damage. They recommend replacement. I decline. The scar remains. Some damage is instructive. When the formalities are complete, I am dismissed. No commendations. The Imperium does not praise survival from damnation. It expects it. I return once more to the observation port. The debris field of the destroyed world is still visible at extreme range, a faint smear of light against the black. It will haunt this sector for generations, a gravitational reminder of judgment past. Navigational charts will mark it as hazardous. Pilgrims will whisper about it. No one will ever officially acknowledge what happened there. I rest my gauntlets against the glass again. The gesture feels older now, worn thin by repetition. I wonder how many times I have stood like this, after nights just like the last one. I wonder how many of those moments I no longer remember. The daemon's words echo faintly, stripped of its voice, but not its intent. You cannot erase a night like that. It was not a threat, it was an observation. I think of Titan, of its endless cold and unyielding stone. I think of the rituals that carved my past away piece by piece, of the deliberate cruelty meant to save my soul by hollowing it out. They succeeded, in part. Enough that I function, enough that I endure. But something remained, something stubborn, something that insists on bearing witness, even when it is not required. Perhaps that is my true purpose, not to fight daemons. Thousands of my brothers can do that. Not to authorize exterminatus. Others hold that power. Perhaps I exist to remember what those acts cost, so that the Imperium does not have to. If so, it is a lonely function. The ship turns, aligning for its next translation into the warp. Another threat awaits. Another world balances on the edge of salvation and annihilation. The cycle tightens, efficient and merciless. I straighten, letting the weight settle where it belongs. I am a Grey Knight. I am the Emperor's will made manifest. I am the witness to nights that history will pretend never happened. The night before Exterminatus is over. The nights after it are endless. And I will remain awake for all of them. Wakefulness becomes a discipline after a time, not the absence of sleep, but the refusal to surrender thought to silence. I have learned how to stand watch inside my own mind, how to let memories circulate without allowing them to metastasize. It is a skill not taught on Titan. It is one I developed out of necessity, like scar tissue forming where something vital was cut away. The sanctum of absolution hums as it prepares for another translation. Crew move with rehearsed calm. To them the last days were a success, a daemon banished, a cult shattered, a world condemned but spared annihilation, at least for now. They will file their reports, cleanse their instruments and move on. That is how survival scales to empire. I remain at the viewport until the stars blur and fold, until reality peels back and the warp pours in again. This time it does not press so close, or perhaps I have learned how to carry the pressure better. There is a difference, though it is difficult to articulate. Pain that is expected is easier to endure than pain that surprises. Within the warp there are moments of false stillness, pockets where the screaming quiets to a murmur. It is in one of these moments that a realization settles over me, slow and unwelcome. Exterminatus is not the end of anything. It is a punctuation mark, placed by those who lack the patience to finish the sentence. The warp does not mourn destroyed worlds. It adapts. It learns. Each annihilation teaches it something about us, about our thresholds, about the lines we will cross to feel safe. I wonder how many times the Emperor anticipated this, whether he saw this future as the only viable outcome, or simply the least catastrophic among many doomed possibilities. Faith says he knew. Experience suggests no one ever fully knows the cost of survival until it is paid. The ship emerges from the warp hours later, real space snapping back into focus like a clenched fist opening. Another system, another crisis. The specifics blur together now. Distress signals, anomalous readings, whispers of heresy blooming in the dark. It does not matter which name this world carries. The pattern is always the same. I am summoned again, this time not to witness, but to advise. The Inquisitor's gaze lingers on me longer than protocol requires. He has read the after-action reports. He has seen the psychic traces I left behind in the last engagement. He knows something about me is atypical, You have a perspective others lack, he says carefully. I want it. Perspective. The word tastes strange. He outlines contingencies, escalation protocols. The unspoken possibility of exterminatus hangs in the air between us, uninvoked but ever present. I listen, I assess, I respond with the precision expected of me. When asked whether the taint can be contained, I hesitate for a fraction of a second longer than regulation allows. Yes, I say finally, for now. The Inquisitor nods. He understands what that qualifier means. For now is often all the Imperium needs. Tomorrow can burn when it arrives. As I leave the chamber, I feel the familiar weight settle again, not dread, awareness. Every decision here is a step toward or away from annihilation. Every night carries the potential to become the one before exterminatus. That knowledge sharpens everything. It makes each breath deliberate, each command precise. Later, alone once more, I remove my helm and trace the cracked ward on my chest plate with bare fingers. The metal is cool, the scar beneath it is not. I think of the billions who never had a chance to consider their end, who lived ordinary lives until the sky itself judged them unworthy of continuation. I think of how easily that fate could be reassigned, redirected, delayed. There is no absolution in these thoughts, only clarity. I replace my helm and stand ready as the ship aligns for orbit. Somewhere below, another world spins, ignorant and hopeful, balanced on a knife edge it cannot see. Perhaps it will survive the night. Perhaps it will not. Either way, someone will remember. I will remember. Because long after the guns fall silent, long after the reports are sealed and the names erased, the night before exterminatus remains, etched into the soul of the Imperium, carried forward by those cursed to stay awake. And as long as I draw breath, forged weapon though I am, that memory will not be allowed to fade. The ship settles into high anchor above the new world, and I feel the familiar alignment lock through my armor as the void stabilizes around us. From this height, the planet looks deceptively calm. Cloud bands curl lazily over continents scored by industry and war. Oceans reflect distant starlight like polished steel. There is no visible sign of the infection yet. There never is at this stage. Corruption prefers subtlety. It whispers before it screams. I am assigned surface reconnaissance, not because my skills are unique, but because my presence has become useful. I am the one sent to look first, to feel for the fault lines others cannot sense, to decide whether a world stands on the brink or merely leans too close to it. This is not an honor. It is a test that never ends. The Thunderhawk's engines howl as we descend through the upper atmosphere. Turbulence rattles the hull, a reminder that even loyal worlds resist intrusion. I stand braced near the ramp. Maglocks engaged, my mind already reaching outward, tasting the psychic weather below. There is fear here. That is normal. There is anger. Also normal. Beneath it all, coiled tightly, something else waits. A resonance. A rhythm too deliberate to be coincidence. We land outside a sprawling hive city, its spires rising like broken teeth from the smog. Defense batteries track us, but do not fire. Clearance codes pass. The Imperium is expected here. It always arrives eventually. As the ramp lowers, I am struck by the sound. Not chanting, not screaming, silence. Thousands of people packed into kilometers of hab space, holding their breath at once. They know something is wrong. They always know, even if they cannot name it. We advance into the city with measured force. Arbites and local militia fall in behind us, relieved to have something solid to anchor their fear. They look at my armor with reverence, with terror, with hope. I give them none of it back. Hope, like memory, is dangerous when unmanaged. The further we go, the stronger the resonance becomes. It pulls at the cracked ward on my chest plate, a dull ache that deepens with every street we cross. I know this sensation now. It is not the raw intrusion of the warp. It is preparation. Something is being arranged. We reach the central transit cathedral just as the bells begin to ring. The sound rolls through the hive like a tidal wave, deep and resonant, vibrating through metal and bone alike. The bells were meant to call the faithful to prayer. Tonight they serve another purpose. I feel the moment the pattern completes, the instant when ritual snaps into place and the city itself becomes part of the invocation. Too late. Someone whispers over the vox. Not yet, I think, though the certainty I once carried is thinner now. The crowd floods the plaza, tens of thousands pouring out from side streets and transit tunnels, drawn by instinct and suggestion rather than command. Their faces are slack, their eyes unfocused, their voices murmuring fragments of half-remembered scripture, twisted into something new. Symbols glow faintly beneath skin, burned in from the inside. This is not a cult, it is a congregation. I step forward, raising my blade, psychic wards flaring as I project my voice across the square. Citizens of the Imperium, I begin, the words formal, rehearsed. You are under the protection of the Emperor. Disperse immediately and, the bells change tone. The sound sharpens, harmonics sliding into frequencies that scrape directly against the soul. The crowd convulses as one, bodies arching, mouths opening in a unified scream that is cut short as something else begins to speak through them. I feel it then, unmistakable and vast, not fully present but no longer distant. A presence pressing its face against reality, smiling at the shape of the door being built for it. Behind me, my brothers open fire, disciplined volleys cutting swaths through the possessed masses. Bodies fall. The crowd does not break. They step over the dead without slowing, driven by something that no longer needs their consent. And in that moment, standing in the widening slaughter, I understand with cold clarity what this night is becoming. This world will not be saved by blades alone. The resonance is too widespread, the pattern too deeply embedded. To cut it out would mean dismantling the city piece by piece, and even then the echo would remain, waiting to bloom again. Containment would take decades. Decades this sector does not have. The realization settles in my chest like a weight made of lead. This is another night before Exterminatus. The Inquisitor's voice crackles over the vox, tight with urgency. Assessment, Brother Justicar. I look at the sea of humanity surging toward us, at the sky beginning to darken with unnatural clouds, at the bells still ringing, still calling. I think of the world that burned, of the echo that followed, of the daemon's certainty. I answer honestly, prepare the protocols, I say. We are approaching the threshold. The words feel heavier than any weapon I have ever carried. The bells ring on, and somewhere, far above, a ship begins to realign its weapons. The threshold approaches, and the air itself seems to tremble. The bell's resonance now strikes at the very marrow of the city, vibrating through stone and steel and human flesh alike. I feel it in my bones, in the wards scarred across my chest, a pressure that no armor can fully block. My brothers move like extensions of my will, disciplined and lethal, yet even they hesitate at the edges of this resonance. Something, beyond comprehension, waits for the final note. I step forward into the plaza. The possessed crowd surges, unnatural in their cohesion, their faces flickering between humanity and something else entirely. Their screams overlap, a psychic chord that threatens to tear the edges of sanity. I raise my blade and chant the litany of purity, a rolling tide of silver fire erupting along its edge, wards blazing, but the flames do not burn their bodies. They burn the warp taint woven into their very souls. The psychic pressure fights back, stabbing at me with every pulse, testing, probing, mocking. I remember the night before the last Exterminatus. I remember the void, the silence of a dead world, and the echo of billions lost. That memory steals me now. I push forward, my mind a fortress of discipline and fury, every thought sharpened to a point that can pierce reality itself. A daemon manifests at the center of the ritual, a grotesque mockery of human form, limbs shifting, faces appearing and vanishing like reflections in broken mirrors. Its eyes find mine, and in them, I see everything the warp has ever stolen. Its voice folds around the plaza, a chorus of all who died here, bending their terror into command. You cannot stop what is coming, little knight, it hisses, though it is not fear I feel. It is anticipation. It craves the final act. The world belongs to me before the Emperor does. Do you remember what you lost? All of it? They will scream, they will suffer, and still you will carry the memory. Why do you fight so hard for dust? I answer not with words, but with action. The first wave of psy-cannon fire tears through the congregation, disrupting the weave of the ritual. Wards flare and burn, cleansing the immediate vicinity of demonic presence, but the psychic tide is vast. I step into the heart of the square, silver blade held high, chanting faster, deeper, letting every syllable vibrate in resonance with the Emperor's will. The daemon lashes out, tendrils of warped flesh and flame, striking at my wards, rending my mind, scraping memory raw. Pain blooms bright and white, but I do not falter. I call upon every lesson, every training, every ritual of purification carved into me on Titan. Every scar, every erasure, every ritual endured becomes a weapon. Around me, my brothers cut a path through the living ritual. Each movement is precise, methodical, relentless. Bolter fire, flamers, litanies, each a strike designed to contain, to sever, to excise what should not exist. Still the daemon grows, drawing sustenance from the psychic resonance of the city itself. Time becomes a blur, seconds stretch, minutes fold into themselves. I see flashes of the destroyed planet, still etched into memory, the exterminatus that left the warp screaming in aftermath, and draw upon it as a warning, as fuel. Nothing I face tonight may be final, but the discipline of the Grey Knights is eternal. The daemon shrieks and surges one final time, its mass attempting to collapse reality around it. I step forward and drive my blade through the center of its being, the silver flames flaring beyond expectation, the wards exploding outward in a radiant tide. The psychic blast rips through the plaza, collapsing buildings, silencing bells, severing the connection to the warp. The city trembles, the air snaps, time shudders, and then silence. The aftermath is terrible and complete. The crowd is gone, their bodies purged or absorbed into the warp's retreat. Smoke rises, ash settles, the city breathes again, uncertain, hesitant. My brothers and I stand among the ruins, wards still flaring faintly, psychic exhaustion pressing like a physical weight. The daemon is gone, the ritual is ended, but the night has left its mark, deeper than any wound on flesh or ceramite. I kneel once more at the edge of the plaza, placing a gauntleted hand against the scorched pavement. I taste blood, sweat, and ash on the air. The psychic echo still lingers, a whisper in the back of my mind reminding me of what was almost lost, what had to be destroyed, and what I will carry forever. The sun rises, or the closest approximation the planet offers through its poisoned clouds, and light fractures across the ruined spires. There is no celebration, no relief, only the steady, relentless truth of what duty demands. I rise, dust and ash clinging to armor, and speak aloud for the first time in hours. This night is a lesson. Remember it, carry it, so that the Imperium may endure. Above, the ship waits, ready to depart for the next threat, the next world on the edge of damnation. Below, the city will rebuild, if it can. Above all, I endure. Memory intact, duty relentless, vigilance eternal. The night before Exterminatus is over, yet its shadow stretches across the stars, across minds, across time. And I will bear it, as I have always done, as I will always do, until the Imperium asks for another night like this, and I will be ready. The stars watch silently. I stand alone, and yet not alone, carrying the weight of worlds and the emptiness between them. This is the life of the Grey Knight. This is the cost of remembering. This is the truth of the night before Exterminatus. The silence settles finally, but I remain awake. The silence is deceptive. It is never truly quiet after a night like this. Even as the fires die down, even as smoke thins and the city begins its slow, uneasy recovery, the psychic residue lingers. A taste of it clings to the back of my mind, a metallic tang that reminds me that life continues, but the warp remembers. It remembers everything we have done, every scream extinguished, every ritual cut short, every daemon denied birth. I walk the perimeter of the ruined plaza, boots crunching over scorched debris, my blade humming faintly with residual wards. Every step is measured, every breath a rhythm to anchor me in the reality that insists on returning. My brothers do not speak. They do not need to. Each knows the cost, even if they do not carry it as I do. I am the witness, the memory bearer, the one cursed to hold the night in mind long after the world forgets it ever existed. Fragments flicker in my thoughts, the echoes of the dead, the dying, the unsaved, faces flash, each one a shard of what might have been. Children, soldiers, cultists, all claimed by fate or failure, all now part of the psychic tapestry I carry. I do not allow grief. I allow understanding. I allow clarity. Pain is acceptable. Weakness is not. I reach the edge of the city and pause, looking outward. The world spins on, indifferent, Clouds roll across skies still tinged with unnatural fire, rivers of smoke mingling with ash. In the quiet suburbs, or distant manufactoria, survivors move through their fragile routines, unaware that the night could have swallowed them whole. This is the paradox of the Imperium's mercy. To save some, the many must burn, and even those saved carry the shadow in their bones. I kneel at the edge of the observation platform, not to pray, not to recite litanies, but to center myself. The scars beneath my armor throb faintly, reminders of past purification rituals, each one a memory deliberately erased, a part of who I was sacrificed so that I could endure nights like this. I feel the pulse of the warp that remains, residual and patient, and I whisper a warning into the void that I am aware, that I remember, that I endure. The ship's engines rumble in the distance, a signal that our presence is no longer required, that we have done what was necessary. Orders will be filed, reports will be written, histories will be amended. The Imperium will cleanse its records, as it always does. But I do not need the record. I carry the truth within me. Rising, I take one last look at the city. The bells are silent now, broken. The streets empty, save for those few who survived by chance or instinct. In them I see the cost of duty. In them I see the reflection of worlds before they were lost to the Emperor's judgment. I return to the ship, stepping aboard without ceremony. The engines roar, lifting us away from the planet's surface. Below, the scars of the night shimmer faintly, a tapestry of ash and psychic imprint. I do not look back for long. Looking back is a luxury reserved for those who will not carry the memory forward. I am not one of them. Alone in my meditation chamber once more, I remove my helm. The air is cold, biting at my flesh, but I welcome it. I trace the lines of my scars, feeling each memory encoded in pain, each erasure etched into flesh and soul. 666 rituals of purification, each one a thread in the armor of my mind. Yet still, fragments survive. They always survive. I close my eyes and let the silence of the ship envelop me. The stars drift past the observation port, indifferent witnesses to the endless struggle of humanity and the burdens we carry. I allow myself one thought, fleeting and unspoken. Tomorrow, another world will need judgment. Another night before Exterminatus will come. And I will be ready, because to be a Grey Knight is to endure, to remember, to act when the galaxy demands cruelty in the guise of mercy, to survive when the Imperium cannot. I rise, finally, letting the chill sink into me, letting memories settle and sharpen. The night has passed, but its weight remains, etched into the soul, eternal. This is duty, this is memory, this is the night before Exterminatus, and I will never forget.